So welcome to Bunny's Designs. This is a live show with live peoples on live Thursdays. It's recorded for Ustream.tv and also for YouTube for people to watch at their leisure. And welcome to the YouTubers and Ustream. I stream live every Thursday from 9 AM to about 6 PM London Greenwich Mean Time. So it's a long day, there's a lot of waffle, and hopefully everybody has a bit of fun. So thanks for joining me, guys. It's a live show, or asking me questions and commenting on the thirsty bunnies behind me. This wasn't supposed to be built for my studio, it was a bunny, my new studio, which is a bunny run. So the bunnies are in here too. But it wouldn't be Bunny's Designs, I suppose, without. So what we have is the Dr. Martens Hydrus, and I've had a bit of a play. It took a while to work it out because I have set one of these gorgeous liquid Dr. Martens Hydrus fine art watercolours, and there's a lot of colour in there. So I originally put them in my little book of watercolours, and they remain, if you can hear it, tacky is the best. So it's not sticky, but tacky. So there's tons of colour there, but they're tacky. And they've been in this little, which is an open. It's not a stay wet palette. It's just a little cheapy palette. And they've stayed in here. And again, you know, they're tacky. If you can see, and I think it's because they're pure, very, very good quality pigment. Because my professional watercolours in my colour book, my colour box here, these are so tacky I've had to make a little ridge for them because they just remain tacky and sticky. So it must be something to do with just how much high quality pigment is in there, because my as much as they are wonderful, my Cotman watercolours that I've squeezed out here, the three colours, lemon yellow, alizarin crimson and cerulean blue, they've dried out quite well, but they're still fantastic quality. And actually for this particular, they're brilliant because they are completely, it's a little flat pan that I've squeezed out of the tube. These are the pans that I've cut, but very dangerous. Wouldn't recommend it. Will not be doing it again. I nearly lost my fingers twice. So if you want to put these in a little book of colours, squeeze them and leave them to dry. This is on like a little postcard, watercolour postcard. It lasts quite well. You've got the tubes, leave them at home, and you have a big palette with these colours squeezed on. But again, I think it's the high pigment that makes these stay tacky. So I use them dry, and you can get a really nice watercolour effect without a lot of water, with a long damp rigger. There's a couple of videos about it, and so you can get some really nice watercolour effects. So you get the very, very strong colour, and then the rigger releases the dampness slowly, so you can use it in a colour book. If you use a watercolour brush, they're designed to hold a lot of water, and as soon as you touch the page, it floods with water. Fine on watercolour paper, but no good for colour books. But if you use them as the dry method, that's brilliant. You can spray these wet again, and then you've got them in this pure form, which we are using today. But I do like using them in this dry form, and they don't go anywhere. It's just they just always remain a bit tacky. But you do get a nice watercolour effect. Having said that, today I'm going to use them a different way. I'm going to use them as a wet medium, as a watercolour. I don't add water to them, I just put a few drops out. You don't need any more than that. So the first one I've got is, this is a set of number 1. They come in 3 different sets. There are some other Dr. Martens colours in little bottles. They're not light fast, and they're not professional watercolours. They're a tint or a tone, or they're so called something else. So the Hydrus are the fine art ones. So you need to give them a bit of a shake, and then take the top off, and you have a little eyedropper, and I'm going to put 2 drops of yellow Hansa in there. Oops, just move those out of the way. And that's going to give me the coldest yellow, that lemon yellow, the very cold one. This is called Hansa yellow. Now, in this particular set, I don't have a cadmium yellow or a kind of warmer yellow. It goes from a gamboge, which is almost a tangerine colour. So I want something in between. So I'm going to put 2 drops of yellow Hansa in the next one. Remember to put the lid on, because if they tip up, they're gone forever. Shake the yellow Hansa, which is a gorgeous, gorgeous orangey yellow. And I'm going to put 1 drop of yellow Hansa in there. Now that may still be a little bit too strong, so I'm just going to very carefully put the lid back on. And somewhere I have a little palette knife or a little stirrer. I'm not going to use a paintbrush because I just want to mix them. I want the smallest. I have a little. Oh, that will do. This is a little tool but it's got a little bobble on the end, but it'll mix. I don't want to waste any paint because I'm a tight Yorkshire lass. So if we look in here now, that's still quite warm, so I'm going to put 2 more drops of the very cold yellow in there, and we'll mix that up. And it's still quite vibrant, but it'll be fine. If I want a pale yellow, I'll use that one. So now the yellow Hansa is going next to it, 2 drops. So you can see it's still very strong compared to that one. So I have got one in the middle. So I can put this one away. But what I want now is an orange. Oh, I've got yellow ochre, so we pop yellow ochre in. It's always a good colour. Oh, thank you, V. The Radiant range of Hydrus is a non-professional one. Thank you. Thank you. So, oh, hi Kingo, Kangaroo Babe, V, anybody else popping in? Diamond, thank you. So that's 2 drops of yellow ochre. So we've got the 3 quite nice yellows there, so we're going to have some nice greens, because in this set there is a phthalo green, but I like to put that with phthalo blue and mix them together to get some really really vibrant colours, but they're not natural colours for me, so I like them, but I like them separate. So my next one would be an orange, and I don't have an orange, but I do have a brilliant cad red. So I'm going to put 1 drop of brilliant cad red into there, and I'm going to put I think I'm going to put 2 drops of yellow Hansa, because I think the red is going to be too strong for the gamboge. And again, use the little blender tool, and I have an orangey red. That'll be fine. Yep, it's an orange. So that's the gamboge, which is like a tangerine colour, and this is an orange colour, as in an orange fruit. So then I now need 2 drops of cadmium red. So my next one, I have 3 bright pinks. Now my daughter bought me the wrong one. I wanted a cad red. So there's deep red rose, Elysian crimson, and quinacridone magenta. So they're very, very pinky. The deep red rose is okay, but it's not kind of cool enough for me. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put 2 drops of brilliant cad red in there. Put that one away, and I'm now going to put, oops, if I did shake it first, 1 drop of deep red rose, and I'm going to put that one to one side a second, and I'm going to mix that. And that's given me, it is still actually quite pinky, so I've only got one orangey red. But if I put this red next to it, you'll see it's still kind of reddier than that one, but I'm actually going to probably put 2 more drops of cad red, because I want a colder red, but that should do. I've got my deep red rose. I don't really need the alizarin crimson, but we'll pop it out. It's very, very similar. 2 drops of that. And I got a bit carried away because I'm going to lose out of Wells, and Quinacridone pink will go there. Sorry, Quinacridone magenta. And the next one is a cobalt violet. Now, bearing in mind, I am going to be 2 drops of that one. So that leaves me an ultramarine, which I am going to put in there because I do like my ultramarine. But I'm also going to put the cobalt blue. Now, because I'm fairly level, my little drops are going to stay where I put them, hopefully. I'm going to leave cobalt, I'm going to leave ultramarine and cobalt blue out for a minute and bring out the yellows, and I'll show you why in a second. So I can shake my phthalo blue and my phthalo green. So I've got 2 drops of phthalo blue at this side. I'm not going to put it up here because I don't really need that one. I love it as a fake blue, but that's about it. And I'm going to put 2 drops of phthalo green up there. And that's going to give me a little bit of colour. So I've left this well has got black and white, so I'll get rid of the black and the white because I don't normally like black and white, but as soon as it's there, we'll put 2 drops. Now bear in mind these will dry, and if I touch them with a damp brush, I will get my colour. And you know me, I don't normally use black, but it's there, so we're going to start using it. Then I have Venetian brown and burnt umber. Now, for some reason, and it's something to do with the pigment, Venetian brown goes a bit bitty. But as long as you remember that the minute you put water to it, it dissolves perfectly back into a watercolour. So don't ever get upset about it. Some of the other cheaper things don't do that, but these do. So you see it's very bitty, this one. It's this one. It's the burnt umber. It's because it's a pure colour, I think. It goes very bitty, but it's a gorgeous colour. But it will blend into nothingness, into just pure colour. So I've got this big space here, and I've also got this one as well. So I can do 2 things. I can put the blues here and the yellows here, and that's going to allow me to mix these colours. So I want to keep these pure, but these I want to mix to greens, so we can do it 2 ways. So we'll put a little bit of cobalt blue in that corner and that corner, and then we'll put a little bit of French ultramarine in that corner and that corner. And then what we can do is put the yellow Hansa in that one. Now I've only put 1 drop, so you probably find it's a very dark green. So we could put 4 drops. Now I know that sounds a lot when we're doing this, but when we're thinking about drops, it's not that much. So we've got a lovely rich forest green there. Got to be careful. Don't want to be on a slant really. Now the only thing you've got to remember is if you move this about, these will run because they're just like water. So you've got to be a little bit careful, otherwise we'll end up with yellows and greens everywhere. And of course the more drops you use, so that's 4 yellow Hansa into the same blue, and look at the difference. And that's almost a phthalo one, is that one. Now they may touch, but it doesn't really bother me too much. I'm just going to put 2 drops of this one out as well, because this is a colour that you normally would use. Oops. And that was cobalt blue. So you can end up with some really nice greens just by using, well, that should clean my little. Now these are very, very dark because there was a lot of blue. The blue is obviously very strong. But there's no reason that we can't get some really gorgeous greens. So again, this one needs 1, 2, 3, 4 drops. One, 2, 3, 4 drops. So we've got 6 greens all together, and we're not kind of moving them about too much. I mean, that's a gorgeous, really dark forest. That's an olive colour. Now the reason that one's olive is because this gamboge has got more red in it than that yellow. So if you want to make, if you've got your greens and you add a little bit of orange or a tiny bit of red, you'll get an olive colour. Too much and you'll get brown. So you have to be careful. So we've got some nice greens there. The other thing I used to do is just put a couple of drops of the cobalt there, and a couple of drops of that one. In fact, I did 2, so we want 2 of those, and we'll have 2 cobalt blues and 2 phthalo blues. And then I don't actually put them together, I put them next to it. So I put the yellow probably here and here. So they're next to each other. And then we have the gamboge. Now really we could have done with the, I might just put 1 drop of that colour and 1 drop of that colour. You do use a lot of Hansa because I'd rather have like a cadmium yellow going on. It's just not as olivey to get the nice olives. So we've got quite a lot of colours going on, and then I've got this little plastic cheeky, found it for 50p. It's just a little plastic thing, or you could use a dish or a plate. White would be better, but anything that you can use. And we can mix our colours on there. The one thing we do need is we need 2 pots of water, either like this separated or different pots. Preferably 3 would be better, but 2 will do. And that's 1 for cleaning the brush, and the other one is for using as a clean water for mixing. You just don't need 1 pot, you need 2. Always try and get 2 pots if you can, because even a bucket of water will look murky after a while. And I'm a tight Yorkshire lass, so I try not to use a lot. So that kind of mixing is what I use for oil paints, acrylics, any water-based mediums, gouache, watercolours. Everything that I put out in this particular way is my colour wheel palette, and I kind of I think it's traditionally called light to dark, so white would be here, and then you go through the greens, olives, browns, and that's I think called light to dark, but I just like it because it just kind of mixes everything round. But I do have the phthalo green and the phthalo blue, and that is the one that gives out these, if I can find them, very vibrant colours. And I'm just not quite organised in my studio yet, but somewhere in here we will find, I think these are Hydrus, very vibrant colours, and they're fairly quick to use because they're so strong. So I did get my water brushes out, but I think I may try I might try it. I've got all my riggers out, so let me just have a look and see. I did buy a set of these. I do have professional watercolour brushes in here, but I like this set of Art Master Pearl Series 11. The traditional watercolours obviously let out so much water, and I don't really want that much water. The other thing I want to do is to use a cheapy brush, and this is just a Cotman Winsor & Newton, but I'll use that for mixing, I think. I'll use that one for mixing. But you'll probably see that these are really vibrant, quite vibrant colours. Oopsie. I've got a little tiny one there. Really don't want a lot of colour. So if I want to take this yellow and just touch that, I've got some like a phthalo green, so I've made my own phthalo green. If I take that same blue, I think that was cobalt blue, and just have a touch of, I haven't mixed that together, so we want that to look a bit orangey yellow, don't we? It's not quite, it's just paler than Gamboge, that's all. In fact, you could probably use the little dropper. The colours are so strong, you could probably use the dropper. Pick up a little bit of that, and we've got an olive colour, purely because we have a little bit of that tangerine colour. It's just a bit too light. So the other thing to do, if we want like a bright green, we have this green. What we could do is try the ultramarine. So this is ultramarine. I might as well put two lots together. It's very vibrant, these colours. So we've got ultramarine with a touch of yellow Hansa, and that's given us like a pea green, a grass green, and then just a touch of the yellow one here, and that's given us a really nice green. So we've got 4 greens here, and we can move these together, touch them together, and add other colours to it. So we can have some cold yellow to this one here, and we take it to an almost lime green. So by mixing on here with just the 2 colours originally, we can then add other colours to them to make different colours, and we can get more olive colours. So again, the yellow Hansa to this one is an even brighter yellow green, so almost a Chinese green, that one. But if we put yellow Hansa to it, it goes olive, because it's got a little bit of the red in that, or orange, but you make orange with a touch of red, and that's what does it. And so we want the Gamboge into this one, and again you get some very unusual greens. And if you want to mix two together, you know, you can really get some very nice colours. And although these colours are quite different, they have a common thing, is that they're kind of made together. So these greens will look good all together in one tree, and so will those. And you can get away with mixing together, but it's the thing that, you know, these are connected because of these two colours. And so you always find that you have one yellow and one blue and thousands of greens, but they're all connected. Oh, bye V, thank you for stopping by. Thanks guys for popping in. Hope everybody's okay. So that's given me some quite nice colours, and I'm doing a bit of mixing. So I've got my two cheapy brushes, I've got my little mixer if I want it. I haven't even touched these four colours I've already made. So let's have a quick look at these. So this is one that I've made. And that's obviously yellow Hansa. That's a bright green. That's a deeper green. I mean, this is just photocopy paper, so it won't last 2 minutes, but it'll do. And a beautiful olive colour there. So that proves that, you know, we've got these, we have 2 yellows, and I only use 2 yellows, even though I do have the yellow ochre. Now, the yellow ochre will make other colours as well, but we seem to have got some quite nice colours from 2 blues and 2 yellows. And I haven't even touched the green that came in the bottle. So sometimes you can get some quite nice colours. And you might want that a little bit greener, or a bit bluer, or a bit yellower. So you can play with all these things that are on here. Now you could have these out, but because these are so strong, they will contaminate each other really quickly. So I can contaminate these, and I've still got my beautiful original colours. That's why I put them out like that. And again, these will dry. If I don't move this before it dries, I'm going to have some really nice colours that are ready mixed. I mean, you could make thousands of colours, ready mixed, dry them, and then you can throw them in your bag with your colour book and a little brush, and you're away. I was thinking about having a play and being brave in my Llinda Ravenscroft Fairy and Fantasy art book, which was so very kindly bought for me for my birthday last year. And I've been a bit of a chicken. And bless her, she had it signed for me, so it was wonderful. So thank you for that wonderful present. It's deciding on which one. I've got some greens now, so I might do the green man. But most of these are quite organic anyway, so greens will work quite well. Now, one of these colours I like for toadstools, so we've got the toadstools colour there. I've just moved that lamp out of the way, hopefully it'll stay where it wants and behave itself. I don't know if I want to work too wet. I think I kind of just want to work wetter than I would normally, if that makes any sense. So I'm very carefully going to just fold that back. So we've got some kind of berries going on here, and this is like an olive colour, so I've got that gorgeous olive colour. And that was down here, I think. Yeah, so it's always good to have a test page. So I kind of like that, but then you've got, you know, what you're going to do with it. We put it on here, and actually it's not far off, so it was 50-50. I'd already mixed this one. We can add water to it, so it's paler, or we can use them quite neat. I think I might want to use just a damp brush, just clean it off on a baby wipe. And I think I might just try a little bit of colour on here. I don't want to be too wet, but you like the colour to kind of flow on your brush. And this is watercolour because you can tell it's soaking in. Now if I want to touch a little bit of yellow on here, let's see if this will work, to see if we can put a highlight on that leaf. So I've got a highlight on that leaf by putting half yellow. Now you can only really do this in this method on watercolour paper, because otherwise what will happen? I'll zoom in and we can maybe see this in a little bit better light. So really need a little bit more room, so I'm just going to move the original ones out of the way, which hopefully will just slide through there. But I do like to keep those bottles upright. I'm going to put the paintbrushes, my water pot has little holes in the top, so you can put your paintbrushes upright. So I'm just going to bob them in there because that's going to give me a little bit extra room to play. And so that's got rid of the paintbrushes. I've kept the little pokey tool. I think it's a modelling tool, I think. I'm going to move that across. I'm going to pick the palette up and I'm going to slide this really carefully to one side. But I need to keep it level because the greens will run. So I can put this here now, and I'm going to put her the right way around. So pop her there. I'm going to see if I can move the camera a little bit. Oops, wrong way. And then, so hopefully we can see what I'm doing. See if I can find another lamp. A bit more light. I think I've zoomed in. Oh, I can zoom in a little bit more. So hopefully we can see that. So I've got some quite nice greens on here. One thing I'm probably going to do is clean the brush and just pick up some yellow Hansa. And you can do two ways. Just put a drop of yellow at the top. Now of course this is gorgeous because it's watercolour, so you can really kind of go to town with that. And the other thing you could possibly do is put a touch of the blue in the bottom. So you can work wet on wet, you can work wet dry. My hands are a little bit off today, so they're not doing very well. Now, because I've got colour on here, and I'm a bit of a tight Yorkshire lass, I'm just going to dampen another brush and kind of flick it through and blend it. Maybe that was the wrong blue, maybe perhaps. But you can get some really highlights. But remember that these are really strong colours, so your highlight has to really go in really first, because you will lose that but you can get a bit of a highlight going. And again, you've got to remember to clean your brush, because and we'll have some more yellow hands set out. And this is the beauty of watercolour, is you can really get some gorgeous things going on. And even though this is grayscale, which it normally doesn't do this, but we can use that really dark, the nice dark in there. And these leaves will look that they are connected because they have got the same green and they have the same yellow. So I've actually shied away from the olive colour, and I've got more of a deeper colour now. It's a deep green. It's not real. Now that one's run into that one, but never mind. It'll be fine. It's that deeper blue that I like. Now, as I say, being watercolour, you can go back in, you can do all sorts of things, but you get a little bit more control. You get a little bit more creativity because you can work wet. Thank you, darling. And so of course your colours are going to blend a bit better. So I've got the darker blue on here. Now they've mixed with the olive. I've got another green that I quite like now as well. So we've got this going on as well. So you always find colours by mistake. Now I'm not going to do the back ones because again it's wet. So you've got to, now we're going into watercolour. You have to kind of use the watercolour rules that if you are working wet here and you then decide to touch another colour, you will bleed through with the other colour. So you've got to leave it. So there's loads of different ways you can work. You can dab it in, you can put it in light to dark, you can do all sorts of things. I'm not sure, but Melody says, is the highlight the same as glazing? A glaze will go over the top. Now you can do glazes with watercolours, but you have to let them, a glaze, so you will put a colour down, and normally it doesn't work with watercolours. You work light to dark. So in theory, if I was doing this on watercolour, wet on wet, I would do the lightest colour first, then I would let it dry, and then I'd carry on like that. Or you can do wet in wet, have the light drop and the dark colour, and then you get that natural, I have got it there, there's a natural kind of blend. But the glazes you can do, sometimes you end up with hard lines, so you've got to blend carefully. But you build up colours with watercolours. They're very different to acrylic or gouache because they're opaque. So what you have to do there is you can put light over dark. That's why white gouache, some artists use white gouache. So if you put a drop of white gouache on there, when it's all dried, you will get your white highlight back. A highlight is the lightest tone. So if you look at my ring, the lightest tone is the highlight. That's where the light's hitting it. The rest of it is the normal colour, and then underneath is a shadow. So I don't do tints and tones and shades and shadows. I just do highlights and shadows. So I have a main colour, then there's a highlight, and there's a low light, which is a shadow. Then if you want to put a really bit of dark, like under here, you could go back in with some very dark brown, or add a touch of brown to that same green and get a really rich dark shadow. So that's normally how it works. If you are using acrylics or you are using oils, you can do a mid-tone and then you do glazes of highlights and lowlights, and that's how I built up my degree page that painting that I did. So I built up the layers. In one place there was nearly 50 layers of glazes, and basically I put some shadow in and then I glazed over it. So if it was a light glaze, the lighter tones were paler, but if it was a tone darker glaze, the darkers were richer. And that's how you kind of play, but you can't do that really with watercolours. Watercolour needs to be kind of fresh. I mean, I've played about too much with that really. Normally you would put a colour down and then you would leave it. So, but you can build up, I would call them more layers than glazes, but glazing is just putting one layer over, letting it dry, and doing another one, letting it dry, which you can do with oils, acrylics and watercolours. But there's a wet on wet and there's a wet on dry, so there's lots of different variations of watercolours. This is just kind of mixing them on the page, but I wouldn't do this if I was doing a watercolour really. There's a different way to work. I haven't got any of my watercolours, I can't find them, but normally you would do, which I meant to do with this page, but I'm not well enough to use a big brush, so you would use this brush. This brush I would do for the background all the way across, very pale light wash. That would be the background colour. That would dry, and then I would look at the before I did that I would probably mask out the little white areas of the very highlights, because once you've got that, it's gone. So you mask out the whites, the very, very palest, so that's going to be the little mushroom. I can't just get on there. The little toadstool, white bits, and the highlights on the cherries, and and a little bit of a white shiny highlight on the feather. So you mask out the very, very white bits, and then probably the skin tones you'd mask out, because that's going to be paler than the background. So you have to work the lightest. Once you've gone over the whole thing, I think this one I originally said I'd do the feathers, the wings as well, and then the background all across would be one colour tone, probably a paler green. Then you would build up the colours. So the next one you'd do the skin tone, then you would do we'd do the green leaves, just one colour, flat, pale, watered down, like a glaze. Then you would bring out some other colours in it. But I kind of like working this way. It's easy for me today. I had intended on doing all sorts of things, but unfortunately the hands have decided they're not working. So we're on borrowed time at the moment. So I don't know what colour I've got on here now. Again, instead of messing up that, I can just do here. So I've got fairly pale there. So I'll get rid of that one. I wanted to keep one for yellow. And I'm using the two cheaper brushes at the moment. So again, touching a bit of dark into there. So this is damp. I won't call it wet on wet, but that's dropping in some yellow. Now it is a grey tone, it's a grey scale, so you're never going to get a very highlight colour, because we've already got, it's already been kind of mixed for us. What you could do with his, put one colour straight across, and you would get all these veins and everything showing through, because it's a grey scale. So I've kind of made this really nice, deep, rich green that I kind of like. It's not so bad. Maybe don't like that yellow, but if I use the Hansa yellow, I'll get olive. And the olive is a different colour, and I've got a little bit too much colour on there, so I need to take a bit off. Sometimes you get too much colour going on. So I've ended up with 4 brushes now. But this is often what you do. You start with one colour and messing about. But because this is the colour book, I don't really want to mess about too much with it. I just kind of like, I've got a little bit of highlight going on. And actually I've done that wrong, because I thought she was that way up, and actually technically she's that way up. So I've made a boo-boo, because they should be lighter and they should be darker, and I've done it that the light was coming from up underneath. So the way to kind of rectify that is just to kind of darken that. Now perhaps I should have started with the skin, but I'd made the greens. So we can make this so we still have a highlight touching the tip of that, because it's still wet. Now on a colour page you can't work this wet. That would be dark because it's under this leaf. That would have a bit of a shadow. So we've rectified it a little bit, but it is just a colour page. So all those are kind of okay. Now if she's dry, and you can use a hairdryer, you then now can go in the back. So I'm going to use a very tiny brush now. This is a Pro number 2, but it's a cheapy brush I was going to use for mixing, but it's actually turned out to be quite nice because it's got a very, very tiny point on it. So because these have dried, I can go in here now. And depending on what you want, I still want a highlight on that top, but I want to show that they are really kind of 3D. So I'm just going to put a little bit of that on top. This is the wrong, you see, this is the wrong brush. It's a watercolour brush, but I'm not using it as a watercolour brush. So when you touch, you get that whoosh, a lot of water, and I don't want that. So I'm going to go and I'm going to pick out my favourite. Well, that's a half rigger, but I've got a little tiny one. That's another mixer one I use. I tend to sometimes play with those, but this is my 10-0 liner, and it's one of my faves because you can use it for all sorts of things, but it is wonderful for getting into little tiny spaces. Now if I do touch that, that's not going to be the end of the world, but you can see that that's now it's highlighted, but it's behind it. Now these are the feathers. There's a leaf here that I've missed, and again I've got 4 brushes. There is still a little bit of damp colour on there. So get the colour in, and then with the brush that hasn't got a lot of colour on, I can touch some yellow and just make a little bit of a highlight. Not too much of a highlight because it's in shadow, but it's showing that there is what we call reflective light. So the light's coming down, but as it's coming down, it's bouncing back up. So we've got a little bit of a light underneath. I hope that makes sense. So I've got these two the same. So now we're getting a sense that actually this is connected. So I'm going to find my brush with my colour on it. Oops, and I dropped the brush, which is not good. Always kind of flick on here to make sure you've got the right colour. That's if you've got pencil, pen, whatever you've got. This is quite a nice mid-tone, this. Not working very wet. So now I can go back in there. Sorry, the bunnies are thirsty again. And I've got some yellow, but because of the grayscale you can see it's not doing very much. even though I'm using it quite strong. And then I just need to give just that little bit of a, again I've got too much there. But the yellow, because it's neat, is reactivating the green. So I'm getting a blend rather than... And then the last one is at this side. So going back into the green again. I do need a little bit of dampness, and I keep forgetting, of course, that this is watercolour paper. So I can work quite wet if I want to, but it's just nice to work and not worry. Now again, I can't do here because that's wet and it will run. So you've got to think a little bit about this. And I want a little bit of darkness in that. I didn't like that green particularly. It wasn't the same green. And do want a little bit of that yellow in there. And it does seem to soak in. Again, that's why I don't really like working this way with watercolour paper, because you get your hard lines. But it's nice not to worry. You can use these as watercolours because you don't have to worry about the pages. So because I've got all these greens, you can do two things. You can wash your brush out and think of something else, or you can work on the greens. Now I think I want an olive colour. There's a bit of green in there, but I think I'd like a very nice olive ivy colour. So I'm going to leave that. So I'm actually going to wash the brushes out. I just want to very carefully, if I can pick it up, show you the colour of the water. It's still quite pale. And as a tight Yorkshire lass, I kind of like that. I might actually leave these brushes. I'm actually going to leave these brushes because they've got green paint on them. I'm a tight Yorkshire lass and I don't really want to wash them out. I'm going to turn her around, but I do have that highlight on the cherry, so I know that that's fine. This is drying out, but that's fine. It'll last a while. I haven't managed to knock the other ones, the original palette, yet. I don't really want to work with the riggers because I do want and because I've moved, I just put that to one side, it's in the sun so it will dry. I do want to show very carefully. I'm sorry, I'm on concrete because we've got bare concrete in the new studio. It's not dried out yet, so apparently it takes quite a while. I wonder if I can get this. Let me see if I can show this. The sun is in my eyes. It's a beautiful day. So what I've done here, if I zoom out, oops, I've frozen. Oh, there we go. I've managed to put all my paintbrushes in here. So these are what I used to work with. They're not riggers, they're just ordinary, medium-sized, the Art Master Pearls. Oops, I found some of those. These I use for my degree. These are really diddy ones. I usually draw or paint with a dog hair. So I do like kind of photorealism a bit. There's some big paintbrushes for obviously the oils and the acrylics. So slowly managing to get these into some kind of order. But one of the ones that I do like is this cheapy ones from The Works. It seems to be a good set. The other set I've just bought but not used are Royal and Langnickel, and that was a set of paintbrushes that would be quite good to use. In fact, that would be nice because it has a decent point to it. So you can use, you want a fat, these aren't watercolour ones, they're not the professional fat watercolour ones, but these are good for acrylics, for oils, for fine work. So you can have a good amount of paint on it, but it goes to a point. It's called a round brush. These, I think all these are broken now. Yeah, these are quite nice if you're going to go a long time, but you can tell mine are completely wrecked. I had a lot of those. Oh, I found a series 7 that's chucking about, which shouldn't be. So I must have bought at one point. This is another. So the round brush is the more versatile one. But if you want to do watercolouring in a colour book, the riggers are the best because they don't release as much water as all the others. Just going to go through these just to have a bit of a flick through. So I've got some nice round ones, and they seem to be better if you want to work, as I call it, watercolour but fairly dry, not traditional wet on wet. I kind of like these brushes for that reason. And I always judge them by how they hold their point. Now mine have been used for oils and acrylics, so they are kind of well scrubbed, shall we say. These are the bit finer ones. If you were doing a big flat area, that would be quite nice. So these aren't my expensive ones, they're kind of a mediocre ones. I do like the Dale Rowney. Now that's a round one, but the round ones have a nice point to them, and that's what we want. So we don't want that rush of water, but we don't want the rigor which is too slow and too dry. It works perfectly with watercolour brushes. So I'll pop that back, and then I hasten to add that that is only half of my paintbrushes. But one of them in there I've had since I was 16. It was my 16th birthday present, so I've had some of them a long time. But most of them are cheap and cheerful. So I've got an array of brushes. The Pro Art half riggers are quite good. They kind of give you a little bit. But I love, for this particular wet way of working, you want a round. It's called a round brush. So it's rounded. It's not too fat, it's not going to hold tons of water, it's going to hold enough colour, but you can manipulate it to a point. And some called round points, you can get pointed ones and you can get roundy ones. But the idea is you don't want the big fat watercolour brush. These are round, these are quite nice. This is the Art Master, so they're round but they go to a point. They're just that little bit too big for this particular space. So I hope that made sense. And I used to keep my pencils in there, but I can't use pencils anymore. So sometimes it's quite good to kind of think outside the box. You know, I had 2 trays of I had 2 trays of paintbrushes, and now I can put my watercolours in that tray. And these little bottles in the tray and have all my watercolours together, and I could never fiddle around and find the paintbrushes, and I don't like this kind of, it wrecks the end of your fingernails and it's a long time. So what I've done is I've put my cheapy brushes that I use for glue in one section. I've got my really nice acrylics in another. Acrylics and oils I use the same. I even use the finer ones, the cheaper ones, but there's a couple of watercolour brushes that are just purely for watercolour. But all these will do watercolour, or they'll do oils or acrylics, depending on how fine you want to work. I do like the riggers. The riggers probably wouldn't work with oils because oils have got kind of the less fluid than a watercolour. But I think we can now say we are dried. And I didn't go through, I've forgotten these are not, they're single-sided. So I could have kind of given it quite a lot of water. But I don't really want to. I never work that way. I like to work probably single cream on double cream. And I do that for watercolours, for acrylics and oils. The only difference is these are a liquid to start with. So they're runnier than I'm used to. But normally I work probably the consistency of double cream, single cream. These are probably single cream. They're very, very liquidy. So I'd like these when they've dried a bit and then I can kind of manipulate them how I want. But they're still wonderful, wonderful colours. So I'm quite enjoying myself today. And that's sometimes what art is all about. I've got my cheapy bit of photocopy paper that I'm just using. The colours are a little bit off. They're probably slightly better. There's the olives. But my lighting is really strange in this room. But then I like to mix as well. So we've got quite a good array. They're about £50 of these. But you can use them in a colour book and you can also use them for watercolouring or for colouring. Good quality sketchbook paper for this wetness. Apologies about my little chair on the concrete. So the sun has come out. It's quite a nice day. I don't think I can do anything with the only reason that's working. So I think I've just had a bit of an avalanche. There we go. So I've got my lights down here. Should be fine. So the container I think is for pencils. It has the little drawers, the magnetic drawers around the outside, and it turns round. But I bought cheapy ones. This one I think I found this in a charity shop for £1. This one is quite good, and I've got all sorts of bits and pieces in it. And you know, little sticky things, bits of glue. The sharp pokey tools and the blades are quite good to keep in certain sections. It wants a good clear out because as I've been finding things, I've been throwing things in it. But you could make your own with a tin can and a Lazy Susan. You could use tin cans and a Lazy Susan or cartons and things, and just either even if you didn't want to glue them down to ruin your Lazy Susan, you could. Which is like a turntable. You could just buy put them down with blue tack, and they will stay in position. And a tin, once it's got some weight in the bottom of it, would be quite good. So I've pulled out some more brushes. These I would use if I was doing a bigger painting or watercolour, but I love them. It's just for this particular page. I like the thinner ones, but the Pearl Art Masters Series 11 is just quite nice because once you touch down, it releases that colour. So you're all right on this particular paper, but if you were on anything else, it just floods it that little bit too quickly. So I shall pop that back where it was, and I'll put that underneath. And now zoom back in. I don't think I need the poker tool now, because I've got kind of a nice mix here. I'm desperately trying to keep it level so that these two greens will dry without blending together. But that will mean that there's quite a big puddle there, and I can take this palette. Once it's dried, you can put it vertical, and it will be just fine. If you use a fine spray, or I wouldn't even use a spray, I would just use a damp brush and touch the dry colour, and that gives you some fantastic colours. So I quite like these colours, and again it's quite nice to kind of mix colours again and start doing things. So now we're dry, I can just do that little one behind there. So I'm going to pull out this particular one here, and again, you know, there's a lot of colour on this, so if we touch it with a drop of water, you know, you can show that, you know, you still have quite a lot of colour on there, even though it dried. So I like that. I'm just going to touch here, I think. And there's something nice about mixing your own colour. So if I'd have put that dark colour there before the other one had dried, it would flood that yellow and make it very dark, so you would have lost the highlight. Now I don't think I like the highlight on that top light. I don't think I like it. I think it's a bit too much. Just see if I can move that down ever so slightly. And I'll zoom in and then we'll see a bit better. I did move the camera earlier, but it didn't kind of like where we were. Oh yes, Kingo, they do, don't they? Yes, you need to be able to see things. If you can't see things and get to things, you forget you've got them, or at least I do. Oops, wrong way. Sorry guys, I'm not doing well today. So I like the cherry colour, so I'm just checking so you haven't missed any, because the thing is, you want to get all these greens down, because by the time you've got over here, you might have forgotten how, or you might have changed these greens, because your palette evolves as your drawing does, or your painting. So you might forget which bit of the green you use for which bit, and again, I just don't like that colour there, so I think I'm tempted to just that is a little bit too dark. Oops, and that's far too wet. Luckily, this particular paper can take it. So just by putting that little bit of green in and then dulling down that, I have just toned down that bit of a highlight because it was getting on my nerves a bit. It was just a little bit too much. So I'm trying to, I hadn't forgotten about my organizer tray. Oops, I'm just trying to find. Unfortunately, if I try to read chat, I just can't see the top of the screen. Whoopsie. Oh, I am in frame. There we go. I'll leave it like that. The tray organizer, but as I say, unfortunately I've lost two things that I was desperate to find. My husband, bless him, brought me a cup of tea. Two things I'm desperately trying to find. One is a broken tray, a wooden tray that the front fell off, or one of the front or the back fell off, and that's going to make a really good, handy organizer tray. So I'm looking for little containers, little pots that again just can glue tack it if you don't want to glue it, and I arrange it around so that your paintbrushes aren't flailing around a complete big tray, so you can have the things on your knee. In the car it's brilliant because your pens and pencils don't roll about, your pencil sharpener doesn't roll in the bottom of the car and you don't have to try and find it. And even for painting like this, these paintbrushes here are going to drive me insane because they're just going to roll around. Whereas if you had some blue tack, you can stick them in, then you've got something that you can kind of control, and it's easier to pick up brushes when you can see them like this than when they're all kind of bunched up together, which is the reason I put them in the pencil pot. So if you've got any questions, pop them in caps. So I was really scared to touch this this page, really scared, because it's not, I don't want to use it as a traditional watercolour. I suppose what I could do is, because to do wet on wet, you really see that would be nice, wet on wet, but you need to, I don't know if you call it mask it down, is to tape it down. I've forgotten the word for it, for putting down your watercolour, but you stretch your canvas first, you stretch your watercolour first, and then you don't get any buckle ever. It's as flat as a pancake. Excuse me slurping, this is my cup of tea. And we do have some wonderful sunshine, but I'm not sure I can show it without making everybody completely ick. If I undo this very carefully, and I've just tightened it up. Now, very carefully, we're going to go, oh no we're not, because it won't do it. Sorry guys. It's the angle of everything that I've got it at a really bad angle, so it's not working very well today. I was going to show you the sunshine. We actually have sunshine in the UK. It's very cold, bright, but it's bright, so it's okay. So I'm going to take out these, what I call round brushes, so they're round with a point, and I'll keep the other ones just for, some of them have dropped a bit so much I've sellotaped the things together. They're that old, so none of them are really expensive, and for years if I go to an art shop I'll buy a paintbrush. I now buy 3 if I go anywhere, but we'll see. So we want this, oh excuse me, too much. I'm going to use that fine brush first because these colours are really, really strong, really strong. So I want a cherry colour. I think they're going to be a cherry. So I did mix a little bit of that, one of the reds with the cad red. Oh, that's quite a nice colour. So I don't need to do very much with that. But I'm going to take some and put it on the palette. And I'm going to take a touch of, I think that's purple. Yeah, I'm going to put the purple there because what I want to do is, I'm just going to get rid of that and show you with this brush probably. Wait a minute. What I want to do, and again twist to a point, oh, that's a very old brush. That's a sable, you can tell. Look at the paint crumpled off it. These, I mean, some of these brushes are nearly as old as me, not quite. So what I want to do is, I've got like a cherry, and it's a very bad cherry, so, and I've lost the highlight, but we've got the cherry, but we can also, now you can choose your shadow or your low light. It can be kind of a rule of 3 that I do, so that's 3 colours next to each other on a colour wheel. Oh, hi Queen Pam, welcome to Bunny's Designs. Everybody else popping in. So you can do the rule of 3, so you could have an orangey top, darky red, and then you can have a purple. Or you can use a complementary colour to make your shadow. And again, don't want too much water. So we've got our red. Oops, we've got our red. And then we can put Now there was a bit more green in there than should be, so I'll just pick a bit of that up. So you see the complementary colour. There's two different ways of doing a shadow. I added a bit more green than I should have done, really. I have to be a bit careful because I don't want to go through. That was a bit of a big brush, that one, really. So I've got a half rigger there. I think that might be quite nice because it is a small space. Now, because it's a grayscale, you could just put the colour straight over the top. But what I want to do, and I have got a damp brush, but it's not overly wet. Because of the grayscale, it's gone dark very quickly. But I would like to keep the highlight, which is that white dot. So there's a little white dot there, and I want to keep that. Now really I should have worked that side and worked down because, of course. Now I'm not working very wet at all, considering this is watercolour paper, but I am working wetter than I would because I'm retouching it and going over it. So I am working a little bit wetter than I would. I'm just putting a touch of that purple in. And there's a bit too much there, but the second time here is better. So we might not end up with that red. We may end up with a rich cherry red. Again, I'm going to clean the brush out. But it's quite nice that you don't have to worry about the wetness. So it's really nice to work in. Now that's very wet. If I can just tilt it, you can see. You can pick up. Can you pick up all that wet? So I cannot work next to it now. I have to work somewhere else. Now it won't take long to dry because it's watercolour, but I can't work there because I want a dark tone here, which is the deep purple. But if I put the deep purple in there, it'll run straight away. So I now have to go somewhere else and work. And you can't get it very pale because of the grayscale, but we're not really bothered about that. And then just a touch of purple. So this is a little bit wet on wet, but I kind of like it a little bit stronger than that. And then you can either, going back to that liner, so this is the Dale around a line, the 10-0. I really like that one. So again, I think I'm going to go back in there with it and then pull that purple back down. I'm working in Daydreams by Llinda Ravenscroft. It's the Watercolor Fairies and Fantasy Fairies colour book that was bought for me last year for my birthday. By a wonderful... oh, I've touched that one really, so I shouldn't have done that. But I'm only using the same colour, so that'll be fun. Put this colour on first. Now you can put the colour on first, then you can leave it, and you probably find that looks slightly better. I actually wanted to put the colour on with that one and the purple one with the other one, but I'm doing it the wrong way around now. So this is the main colour. Now you could mix it to a different colour, you could mix your own colours. Remember, we've got the white in there as well. I kind of like the fact that some of these are slightly but it's just so nice not to worry, because it's on watercolour paper. It's so nice just not to worry. Now, sometimes you could think the light would be hitting it differently. And in fact, instead of touching water, what I should do is touch the original colour, because it's so wet. Just drop that in, but there would be a shadow on that one. I don't know if this is coming up, because it's very dark in this grayscale. It's a little bit maybe too dark. I don't know if the colours are coming up. So I've got the original colour and I've used it out of the pot, so I can put that onto here. I'm just dunking straight onto the... And I think it's the one that I used, 1 drop of... Oh, it could be, I don't know, I'm quite sure. So I can't make my mind if I like the red or I like the kind of purpley plum colours. I suppose rose hips would be kind of paler. Rose hips would be almost an orangey colour, an orangey red. I've gone for purpley red. It's more like a berry. Now that one's dried, so I can go back in there now and put some shadow in there. So you can do lots and lots of detail. Oops, I've forgotten these two up here. And again, I've got to make sure that that green is dried, because if I'd have touched the green, it would have run straight into the red and vice versa. So again, it's quite a nice way to work. Just pop that into there. And then I'm using the same brush just to blend that and soften it so it's not as purpley as it first was. Hope everybody can see that. It's not looking very clear on my screens, but I have quite a lot of glare on. I've got quite a lot of glare. It was a good idea at the time, shall we say, to decide this is where we would like to be for the studio. But it is so lovely not to have to worry about keeping everything barely damp and going back over it to get it nice, because you're worried that you're going to go through your page. Because normally with a colour page you can touch it wet and then you have to leave it. So we can build some quite nice areas there. And the nicest thing about this is you don't have a lot of pressure on your hands. You're just bouncing a little soft brush about, so that's quite nice as well. So a touch of purple to keep it wet. Somebody got any questions? You get kind of quite carried away doing this, I think, so I'm going to touch that and hopefully get rid of that purple. So Again, this is pure colour now. There's no water in this at all. But this one is almost dry. Just picked up a little bit of colour. So I've got to be a bit careful now because I don't want that purple to get too high, because I'm going to lose that nice red. This one down here can be a little bit darker. And of course, one thing you've got to think about with this particular one, and I can't work on that one or that one, but I can work on this one because the others are wet. Now I've gone over a little bit with that, but luckily and I can kind of get a bit of a deepness going on the shadow. And it dries quite nice as well. So I don't think it's on there. So I think this one's the driest of them all. So I'll do this next one. Okay. I've got some quite liquidy, neat colour on that palette. Now, if that purple would have been wet, it would have run in and I would have lost that lovely little bit there. So the purple is nearly dry. But with a damp brush you can pick up just the right amount. And actually I like to work in that kind of little bit drier way. This one. So I've got two more to do, and then we've also got to think about skin tones. Yay! So the damp brush, and just pick up a little bit of colour. So some people start at the top of the page, some people start at the bottom, some people do the backgrounds. I'm kind of childish and I do the easy bits first. And I think if you start at the focal point, which obviously is the face and the headdress and the wings, and again that's gone dry now, so I'm going to touch the purple and it's activated it all again, but it's all pure colour, there's no watered down. Just trying to think if I was on this one or the other. I can't remember if I was on this one or the other one. I don't really want too much purple, so blend that in. And normally you would blend with a damp brush, but obviously I'm blending with pure colour, so I'm mixing the colours on the palette, on the paper. So thanks for stopping by, guys. I hope the weather's not doing so bad where everybody is. I know that's getting a bit dry as well, so quite a big chunk on that. And when I finish this, now I do have quite a lot of paint on this one. I picked up quite a lot of paint. So when it's like this, it's quite nice because it's like having a perpetual marker. You remember as a kid, your markers used to flow wonderful, no lines. And I like that now because that's the same colour. I'm actually going to do this one as well. It's a little bit wet, is that, but it's fine because I'm doing the same colour, so it's not going to bother. It's only when the next bit I've got to think about it. So that's quite nice. I've managed to stay in the colours, in the lines, and not go out. So now I need a little bit of purple, but they're not too bad. I'm just wetting the end of that brush just a tiny bit because I want a bit of a shadow and highlight there, and a bit of a shadow and highlight there. And most of this. It's going to blend in because they're going to be a little bit darker, those, because they're all in shadow. Now I have got tons of colour on these, and again, tight Yorkshire lass, I don't really want to do that because I might use that red in the mushrooms toadstools further down. So that's gone on quite well, is that? And again, you don't have to worry about, I'll just show you the front of the book. Oh, I don't like to see the picture. It's Llinda Ravenscroft, whoops, you can see it there. Fairy and Fantasy Art. And it's on 300 GSM paper, so you don't have to worry about it. It's just really nice to work with. So that's the end of part one because it's been quite a while, and I'm going to come back and do I think I'm going to do the leaves in part two. Thank you for watching.